All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. I'm so delighted to see everybody. It's nice that your cameras are on. My name is Amy Dessenberg-Wines, and on behalf of the Iowa Secondary Transition Learning Community, I'm just really excited to welcome you to this session on voting. For many of you, this may be the first time you're preparing to vote, and it's so exciting and important. I applaud you for taking the time to become informed and take this right and responsibility seriously. Woohoo! Go voters! This is going to be a lot of information, but don't worry about that because we're recording it. So if you need to go back and catch parts of it, again, you can. Plus, you can always reach out to us with questions. I want to give a shout out to all the teachers and parents and other adults who are here who might be supporting you. This is a really big step, and we're so glad to have you involved in this. We are really lucky to have the Iowa Developmental Disabilities Council work with us in providing the training today. The Iowa DD Council works to create change with and for persons with disabilities so they can live and work and learn and play in the community of their choosing. The council is made up of 20 plus volunteers, and over 60% of the council members have a disability or are a family member of someone with a disability. Each council member is appointed by the governor of Iowa, and it's a really great group to connect with. You guys may someday want to be on the council and helping guide their work. This important step you've taken today to become involved in the political process, to exercise your right and your responsibility to vote, is a big one. I want to thank Bill Kallestad of the DD Council for his work in bringing this session to you, and we're truly grateful to have Bill with us to share this information. Right now, I'm going to turn it over to Bill to learn more about this process and the important steps to fully participate in electing people to represent the issues important to you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much, Amy, and I'm really, really excited to be here. This is an exciting time of year for the DD Council, but certainly for the United States. And I loved all the chatter as we got started, people who are already submitting their votes and making sure their voice is heard. And so we're going to walk through the whole process from beginning to end, how to register, how to become a voter, how to become informed, and then finally how to cast your vote. And so does that sound like a good idea? Our idea is to make sure that we make our mark, make sure our voice is heard, and that we get a chance to vote. Just like Amy reminded you, if you have anything you want to share, please put it in the chat box. If you hover over your main screen, you'll find an area to provide information in the chat, and I'll ask some questions throughout the training, and if you want to submit some information there, that would be great, and we'll try to keep up on top of that as we go. So let's get started. So what is the Developmental DD Council is certainly part of what we do, but we started a project a number of years ago, and it's called ID Action, Iowans with Disabilities in Action. We're a nonpartisan, we're a statewide project dedicated for greater civic and political involvement amongst people that have disabilities. And so we're really trying to activate both the young and older people with disabilities to make sure their voice is heard, and not just on issues that affect people with disabilities, but on all things. So there's a few ways that we get people involved. Every year we have a conference, and we have people come in. This year we did it virtually, like everybody else is doing stuff virtually, but historically we've done it in person, and we've had senators, legislators, people from the national level, people from a local level come and talk about how they engage civically and politically. We also have voter training, which you are part of today. So if everybody waves and kind of moves their hands, that means that you're part of a voter training. So you're participating in our second one, and we're really excited to have you here. Another one is that we become advocates. There might be an issue that's really important to you, that you feel like your senator, your legislator, maybe it's local, your local city council member, your principal, your school teachers, your family, they need to know. Contact us and we can help you go through some toolkits, and we'll go through some of those later about how to share your voice and make sure that it's heard. So kind of interesting, in the 2016 election, not too long ago, 16 million people in the United States that had a disability voted. And if you were to match that rate against people without disabilities, it was at a 6% lower than people without disabilities. And that seems like a gap, and certainly we want to close that gap. But just to provide some encouragement, in the year 2000, that gap was 20%. In the year 2004, it was 12%. And now it's 6%. So if we can get it even a little bit lower, that would be pretty exciting. If we could vote at the same rate as people without disabilities, we have a powerful message. So you might ask yourself two questions. Why are more people with disabilities voting? You guys are empowered. Like, again, the chatter before we got started, where people were talking about already knowing about voting, already casting their votes. I know that you guys think it's very important that whatever things that are happening to you, just like as things happen to me, you want to make sure that your voice is heard and you're advocating for yourself. Information's a lot more accessible. It's on the internet, it's on TV, it's on Facebook, it's on Twitter. People know a lot more about what's going on in the world than they did 10 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago. And the information's readily available, but there's still a gap. And I think that's what we're talking about today, is why is there a gap? And you can put that in the chat box if you have some ideas. But one of the things that I think that creates a gap is that people feel uninformed. We're going to talk about how to become informed today. I think people think it's complicated. We're going to try to make it really simple because it is simple. Iowa wants you to vote, and we're going to try to show how that can be done. And then finally, is people just always wonder, does my vote count? And we'll talk a little bit about here. So do you guys really think if you vote that it matters? Amy's already nodding yes. You bet. Give a thumbs up if you think that it's important that you vote. I'll kind of look through the different pictures here. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs up. Oh yeah, but I got some visuals. I got somebody with a cowboy hat with a thumbs up. Some people are still wondering if it matters. It sure does. Your voice is very important. I heard it said just this week that somebody said that voting is the great equalizer. So if you're really tall, if you're 10 foot tall, or if you're my height and you're 5'8", my vote counts the same. If I make $1 million a year, or if I don't have very much money in my checking account, my vote counts the same. If I live in Iowa, or if I live in New York, my vote counts the same. And so it's the great equalizer, and it's a great chance. So just real kind of quick, how many people have voted before? Raise your hand. I'm going to kind of screen, keep them up if you can. I see some hands up. You can give a thumbs up. And so we have some people who haven't voted. How many people have voted other than just an election? Sometimes we vote on something that's happening at school. Sometimes we vote on in our family. What are we going to have for dinner? Yep, Spencer's thinking maybe I voted for what's for dinner last night. So we're going to have you vote on a few things here. There's going to be a poll that's sent to your computer. And we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll see how we're doing. So go ahead, Alicia. What's your favorite football team? I know everybody has one. Wow. And you can put those in the chat there as well. It's in progress. We've got, the Cyclones are making a comeback, it looks like. I'm going to cut this off at about 35 seconds. So right now it's 60-40. And I'll just say the good guys won. That would be, Amy, that'd be the Iowa Hawkeyes. The 60, we had 9 people say that. So you voted for that. Let's try another one. There we are. There's our, all right. We've got another poll. Favorite food. This is a pretty, now I had pizza last night, so I might be swayed. Nope, it doesn't even look close here. Cheeseburgers are not doing well.
Bill, I want to tell you that Dean is kind of a Nebraska fan.
Oh.
He'd like you to edit those polls and include Nebraska.
Dean, I'll call you later. I have some Nebraska jokes that All right, it looks like pizza won. Again, we're kind of about the same. I think the same people who like pizza are also Hawkeye fans, and maybe, well, I'm not sure. So we've got another poll. The next poll really talks about there's a presidential election coming up, and it's less than 27 days away. And we should get really excited because that really kind of makes a big difference in the United States. Who's elected by president, and so you want to make sure your vote is heard. So let's see who this group might elect. We have our current president, Donald Trump, and we also have Joe Biden. So we'll let it go a little longer here. All right.
In the chat box, it's kind of split.
It's pretty close here, but it does look like our current president would hold his, if this group was the final decider, he would hold his position there, 57 to 43%. And so it does tell us. And so as we kind of think about that, we're going to think about, does our vote really matter and why is it important? So just to kind of point out, I think something that's kind of interesting is that if that 6%, remember that 6% that we talked about earlier? If we could close that gap, that would be 2.2 million votes. That's a lot of people. And what a difference that would make, right? And when you think about 2.2 million people, it could really sway the vote of what's important to what's going on in the United States. And we certainly have a voice of the next message. So, so the first thing we're going to ask ourselves, a big question is, am I even eligible to vote? Can I vote? So here's some pieces here. You must be 18 years old. If you're older than 18, you're part of the way there. Do you live in Iowa? Do you have a house in Iowa? Do you live in a residence here? Are you a U.S. citizen? Somebody I heard during the chat when we got started said that they were from Australia, and you certainly could be from another country. One of my best friends was born and raised in Canada. He moved to the United States, and he became a citizen just this year. He said it was so important. He's lived here for 20 years, has always kept his citizenship in Canada, but he became a citizen this year because he felt it was important for him to vote this year. So you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to do that well before the election. And then finally, are you voting only in Iowa? Dean might be a fan of Nebraska, but he doesn't get to vote in Nebraska and in Iowa. So because he lives in Iowa, he really truly is a Hawkeye, whether he believes it or not. But you have to have those four. So let's see how we're doing here, Alicia. Are you eligible to vote? Do you meet all four of those criteria?
So Bill, what you were saying is basically, and this is Jess, just asking, so even if you weren't born here but became a citizen of the United States, then you can vote, right?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay. I'm asking, my husband's in the same boat. He was born in another country but became a citizen a couple of years ago, so he gets to vote in all the elections.
Yes. You're right on, absolutely. And I think that's an important piece is that, if you're, we talked about this earlier as we were thinking about this presentation is there's a lot of ways to have civic engagement. Go ahead and share the poll. We have 18 eligible voters here today. Isn't that great? That's wonderful. Wow. And so you must meet all four of the criteria. There are other ways to be engaged, whether it's being engaged in your family or being engaged at school and participating in the decisions that are made there, being involved in your community. One of our people who was on our council, he got really involved in the Adel bike trail. And he was a really large voice. He was at every meeting. He sat in the front row for every meeting. And his biggest thing, if you've ever ridden through Adel on your bike, every part of the bike path is accessible. And it's not just partly accessible. I mean, he really advocated that not only bicycles need to be able to transition from the bike trail to the road, but also wheelchairs so they could fully enjoy the beautiful bike trails. And the bike trails are even a little wider there as well. So that's pretty exciting that we have voters here as part of. Now, I will say, just kind of a pause, is there are two reasons you wouldn't be able to vote. The first is if you've ever been convicted of a felony. Now, that doesn't completely exclude you, but you would have to verify if you'd be able to be eligible to vote, because a lot of felons have got their rights restored. So you want to check on that. And then the second way is if you've ever been judged by a court to be mentally incompetent. Again, those are two things that are pretty significant. And if you've been involved in something that's considered a felony, you probably are aware of that. So you want to check to see if, and I'll go through this in a little bit on how you can verify that. That would be the first one. And then the second one would be if you had been judged by a court mentally incompetent. Again, that would be something that would be part of something registered. And we'll go through this, but we'll go to the Secretary of State's website. And there is a lot of support there that will show you how to verify whether you're a citizen or how to register. But that's another piece that you can do. But if you meet these other four and you don't miss those other two, you're eligible to vote. So let's go to the next section here is, am I registered to vote? So even myself the other day, I thought, well, I'm just going to verify and check this out. But I'll tell you this, Iowa makes it very easy to vote and they want to hear your voice. So the first thing you do is you go to this website. It's the Secretary of State's website. So it's sos.iowa.gov, elections, voter registration. And I'm going to go to that website in a little bit and show you some of this. But the first thing you do, when you pull up that website, you'll find a link there that says, am I registered to vote? Enter your first name. You can be Bill, and your last name, Kallestad. You put your zip code in, and it will immediately tell you if you're registered to vote and where your polling place is. It sends an email right back, and it's pretty easy to check. So this gentleman's going to show us a video about how to register to vote. Give me a thumbs up, Amy, if you're hearing everything.
Your county auditor. Are you registered to vote? You can't vote if you aren't registered. This election will affect issues that are important to you. It'll affect the future of your children. If you don't vote, other people will make those decisions for you. Contact me, your county auditor, to find out if
I think the video
Did it end or did it stop?
It did stop.
Let me try it again here, sorry.
Hey, Tim here, your county auditor. Are you registered to vote? You can't vote if you aren't registered. This election will affect issues that are important to you. It'll affect the future of your children. If you don't vote, other people will make those decisions for you. Contact me, your county auditor, to find out if you are registered to vote. Do you know if you're registered to vote in the right place? Contact the county auditor in your county to find out. Go to iowaauditors.org and click on the county you live in. Use the contact information to make sure you're registered at the address you currently live at. That's important. That's the law. It's easy to get registered. You can get a form online at the Iowa Secretary of State's website, sos.iowa.gov. Let's check one out. Hello, Tim, the professor. Just follow the instructions on the form. Clearly fill in your information. Clearly fill in your name. Clearly fill in your address. Then carefully read the registered affidavit because you are swearing under penalty of perjury that you meet the requirements listed. Then sign and date the form and mail it off to me, your county auditor. Or in Iowa, you can now register to vote or update your registration online. This will save you time at the polls on election day. If you have an Iowa driver's license or non-operator ID, go to the Secretary of State's website and look for electronic voter registration. Then you don't even have to leave the comfort of your own living room.
Hi, I'm Bill Peterson, Executive Director of the Iowa State Association of Counties. County auditors in Iowa will be happy to help you get registered to vote. Be sure to watch all 3 of our election videos to learn how county auditors bring you free, fair, and honest elections in the state of Iowa.
How'd you get in here? This has been a production of the Iowa State Association of Counties about voting in the state of Iowa. This is part 1, how to register. Remember, these videos pertain to voting in the state of Iowa.
So the next thing I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is registering on election day. And so you do need to register. If you want to register to vote this year, you have to do it by October 24th. And you can do it right now. You can do it today. And there's a website link right there, SOS. Everything is at the Secretary of State's websites. I would go right there, and you can see there's a sample of the registration form. And I'm going to pull one over to our website, I think. I hope. Here. And one more try. Here's the official registration form, and Amy will give me a thumbs up that she sees it. Yep. So
just lost
Bill,
it.
we're not. Yeah, Bill, we're not hearing you.
Oh, I think he's frozen.
Oh,
I think so too.
Yeah, right. I think he's frozen. He'll let it
okay.
come back. That's awesome. Get that pun, that frozen pun.
Oh no, hopefully he'll come back here. Let's just give him a second.
Now might be a good time to ask if folks have any questions or comments. Feel free to either unmute yourself or type them in the chat box. And when Bill comes back, then I'd just like to ask that if you're able to mute yourself again, that'd be great.
I think, hello, Amy. How you doing today? This is Dean.
Good.
I got a quick question that came up from a previous one. If I have never registered to vote, what kind of documents do I need? I think the other day we talked about having like a state ID and stuff like that. So just the process of going over to get a state ID, because I think that's very important. And then, you know, if you never have registered before, I think that's what I know that our class is listening in to this. If we could get that information, that'd be great.
Excellent. Thank you, Dean. We'll ask Bill to cover that when he comes back on. And if for any reason, if we have problems, if for some reason Bill's connectivity is a problem, we'll get that information and share it with everybody afterwards. If you're doing a, oh, please, yeah, go ahead.
What's the last day we can vote in Iowa?
Last day can vote in Iowa. I believe so. Election day is November 6th. I should know that. I'm not the expert.
It's November 3rd.
November.
Yeah, Tuesday, November 3rd. It's always a Tuesday.
Yep. Your voter registration deadline is October 24th, and the general election day is November 3rd.
And then if you get a provisional ballot, if something goes wrong at the polls, then there's like 10 days following the election, isn't it, there for it to be counted? If you have to get a provisional ballot. thought that might. So typically, I think it's going to be on election day. And then David has a question. Before you register, should you tell your parents first?
I'm back. I'm sorry, I don't know what happened.
Hey,
you
Bill.
picked up, Amy. You were doing a good job. I should.
We have a couple questions that came in that, if you don't mind, before we get started again,
Yes.
maybe you could answer those. So the first one, we'll do a couple of the shorter ones maybe first. Is one question we got was, when's the last day you can vote in Iowa? Okay. And so I gave folks the wrong election day, and then we got the right election day, and then I had a question about a provisional ballot, if there was time following the election for provisional ballots to still be counted, which I was thinking 10 days.
Yep. Yes.
Following the election.
Just some dates that I would point out is, if you were going to mail in an absentee ballot, it has to be postmarked by November 2nd. And maybe you covered that. The in-person, so you have to have it mailed by the, you have to be registered by October 24th. You have to have your ballot mailed in postmarked on November 2nd. The safest way to do that is to go somewhere, whether it's the post office or whether it's a grocery store that has a mail system. But you want to see them get it postmarked, so it says that on November 2nd. And then you're right. I will just be honest, I don't know provisional as well. So I try to do as much proactive as possible. But the provisional license, again, let's look that up when we get to the Secretary of State website at the end. And can Jess and Amy, if somebody remind me at the end, and I'll make sure I cover that piece. Yeah. And we'll learn together, because we should all know that.
Hey, Bill, I got another question too. With that absentee ballots, do you, some people are really leery about the mail. You can drop that off at your the Polk County Commissioner's office, can't you?
Yes, you can. Yep. And I'll go through some of those pieces there too, Dean. That's a great point, is that people, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of different opinions out there. If you are going to do it by mail, do it early. Just for example, my daughter goes to school in Illinois, and I mailed her a card on Friday, and she got it. I mailed it on Thursday, and she got it on Saturday. It was so you don't, it seemed like that's pretty safe for the mail, but it is a big influx of mail. So if you were going to use the mail system, I would get that absentee ballot if you haven't already got it. And the day you get it, I'd fill it out and send it in. But you're right, there is curbside voting, and we'll go through some of that in a little bit as well, a little more detail. But
can I give you a couple more quick questions?
Yeah.
One is, before you register to vote, somebody wanted to know, David wanted to know, should you tell your parents first?
Sure. I think it's good to, two things. One is, maybe this is a personal opinion. I think it's always good to communicate with the people that you care about and the people that care, because that's one way we start to form our political opinions and have the great conversations we need to come to the decision of who we're going to vote for. But I will say this, is that voting is an individual right. It's a personal right. And that's why, even when we voted who wanted pizza and who wanted a hamburger, or who wanted pizza and who wanted a cheeseburger, those are all private. We made sure that those votes were private. It is I give the example as my dad, myself, and my son, we're all registered voters, and we don't have a right to tell, even though my dad can tell me still what to do, he doesn't have a right to tell me who to vote for. And I don't get to tell my son, who's, barely an adult, he's 21. I don't get to tell him what to do. He gets to vote on his own. So it is your individual civic right, and you don't have to share that with anybody. But I do think that one of the ways that we form our political opinions and we get the most information out there is to have conversations. And families, that's a personal point. Families are important for us. Sometimes we don't agree with our families. And right now, that can be kind of a, as we get closer to an election, can kind of be a interesting conversation at the dinner table. So.
Just one more question, but first I want to say, Bella, I'm sorry I called you David. I see that that's your dad's iPad. Thank you. It was a great question. And then Dean had pointed out that for folks who have never registered, what kind of documents they might need to bring. And Dean, jump in, there was another part of that as well that you were hoping that Bill would cover.
That's a great segue to my next slide. So we'll go over the identification that you need. So what is the voter ID law? So there are a few things that you could bring with you to demonstrate that you're a registered voter. The first one is there is a voter ID. I'm going to slide forward here a second. This is a voter ID card. You have to, when you register to vote, they'll mail this to you. You want to be really clear and watch that it's coming in the mail, say from the Secretary of State, and it will say that Lynn voter, your registration card's inside. Once you get your card, it looks exactly like that. It's not too fancy. It just says voter identification card, Bill Kallestad, this is where I live, Anytown, Iowa, and then I sign it. But you'll notice what's circled there in the red is the voter PIN. I keep my voter ID card. I used to keep it in my billfold and it would get all tattered, and now I try to keep it in a safe, the smaller safe in our room, just because it's something that's an important piece that you want to keep with you. It's a part of identification. If you also could use your Iowa's driver's license. If you have a driver's license, you're able to drive, you can bring that with you, and they'll be able to verify that by your registration. If you don't have that, and we'll go through this in a little bit as well, but you can bring a non-operator's license, driver's license with you, and that's an identification card, and you can kind of see these on the right-hand side. It says identification card rather than driver's license, and you'll see there's a lot of identification information in there. There's your address, your phone number, it gives your height and weight, maybe not weight anymore, certainly height, your eye color, but there's a way to verify who you are through that. You could also use if you have a passport, or if you have a U.S. military ID, those would be ways for you to demonstrate who you are when you come to vote. And you have to have one of those with you. So what if I don't have an ID? If you don't have an ID issued through the Iowa DOT, you will be issued a voter ID card for free automatically. So when you register and they see that you do not have an ID, they'll send you a voter ID automatically. The real question is, do you have to show that ID at the polling place? And you do. It started back down in 2019. It became a law or a requirement, but you have to have those with you. And I'm gonna go through a little bit of that at the end as well, Amy. I'll show some websites where you can link to get that information. So, one of the things that we brought up, one of the barriers, again, kind of bringing back up that 6%, is where do I get information from and how do I get informed on the election? So one, this is a shameless plug for Iowa Developmental Disability Council, but we have the Iowa Infonet. And the Iowa Infonet, I'm going to share this over here real quick. It is a website. And Amy will give me a thumbs up, she can see it. And so it is a website, and it has information about what is the Iowa Infonet. It's a disability policy resource for Iowans. There's myself and then our executive director, Brooke Lovelace, and then we actually work with Amy Campbell, who is a lobbyist at the Capitol, to create this content. We probably talk daily about it, if not sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. But obviously we're on Twitter, on Facebook, but there's a lot of resources here. Just to point out a few, we have a newsletter, we have a Get Out and Vote, more information about voting, we have Who's Running, an advocacy toolkit, and the Iowa Legislative Guide. And I'm just going to show you, if I can here real quick, the Iowa Legislative Guide. Just for an example of a tool that we have in there. The Iowa Legislative Guide, this is the content. You can learn more about your legislator. What can my legislator do for me? Legislative leadership. You can meet the senators. You can find out what sessions are going on, what committees are involved. Two of the things that I go through the most is I look about the leadership, legislator leadership, and then I also look at the committees. So I'm going to show you both of those real quick. It's a little old school. You have to kind of scroll down here, but this is legislator leadership. Who's the Speaker of the House? It's Representative Pat Grassley. Who's the Majority Leader? It's Matt Winch. I want to pronounce Schittel. And then John Willis is our pro temp, and Majority Whip is Mike Senta. And so you can kind of find out from the House of Representatives who's in charge, and then from Iowa Senate. And then you get to, this is the part that I like, is the meet the senators. So if you wanted to go through and you were really interested, you could find your district, which we do have an interactive map that you can find that on. But for example, Nate Bolton is a person who works in District 16. It talks about what he does for a job. Almost all of them have jobs outside of that. And then it talks about his history, where he kind of comes from. And then you could link from that and go to his actual website as well. And then, like I said, one of the things I also go to is page 50 here. And this talks about the committees. And this is one thing that's really important to me is, okay, who is on, and I'll show a committee that I think is important to all of you. Who's on the Education Committee? Well, Amy Sinclair is a senator who is the chair, but you might find Claire Chelsea is actually my representative, and she's on the Education Committee. So having 4 kids that are in the Des Moines School District, I want to make sure she is someone that that she knows what I think is important, but she also knows what's important for the people in our community. So that's an example of the Iowa InfoNet, a way to get involved and to hear more. I wanted to show you one other thing on the Iowa InfoNet here real quick. And this is one that I'm really going to be encouraging people to use, is that there's a take action here. And so there's a take action button. You hit on that, and then where do you get started? And this is our Grassroots Action Center. And so if you would like your congressman to know how you care about the COVID relief and what's going on, which is a big part of what's going on in the United States, you can actually click right here and you can take action. We'll also support you in writing a letter to Congress, so you could take action right here. And I'll click on that. You fill out your name and information, your email address, and then you would submit that information. Then I could help you, or Amy could help you start lobbying for the interests that you have. So it's a really good way to get involved, I think. So our next president, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Cole here and have him share his story about why he thinks it's important to be elected or to be involved.
Bill, can I ask a quick question while that's loading?
Yep.
This is Kirsten.
Yeah, hi, Kirsten.
Hi. Hey, you showed the representatives and how you could learn a little bit about the different senators, and each of them had a number by them, like a district number. How do I know which one of those, what district I'm in, so I know who I should be reaching out to, like who's connected to me?
Yeah, so on the Iowa InfoNet, there's an interactive map. You just hover over it and it will show the state of Iowa. And that will tell you the other thing, and this is probably the most simple way to do it, is if you just went to the Iowa government page, and I can pull that up too when we get to the end, there's a way for you to determine who's part of your district. And again, it's as simple as putting in your zip code. So that's the one thing you would have to know, is your zip code. So if Amy's zip code is 50310 and mine's 50311, we might have different representatives. But in the more rural areas, I met with a representative the other day who's in charge of Fort Dodge, and then also surrounding 11 other cities. So it's a great question, Kristen, and that's one way to do it, is kind of determine who that is and what's that district. And there's a lot of district maps out there. I think the most user-friendly is the one that the Senate actually puts out there. This is a pretty brief video here. Let's see what Cole has to tell us.
Getting any audio, Bill? I'm sorry.
You're not hearing any audio?
No audio.
Okay, sorry, let me try that again. It's a pretty brief video. Let me pause it.
Share your computer sound, Bill.
Yep. Thank you. When I got shut down there.
I don't want the world to be a bad place. I want it to be a better place, and I want to make the world a better place. Get out there and vote. If you're eligible to vote, get out there and vote. Vote for what you care about.
So one of the things that I talk about that I think it's really important is to kind of figure out what is important to you. What are the things that that you value? And so I'll just list a few that I think are on top of mind of a lot of people. I think that a lot of people care about education. I think a lot of people care about the environment. But I told you about the individual that we work with on our council. Being active, being healthy is really important to him. So he got really involved in both the state and his city council on deciding how the bike path would be accessible to people with disabilities in his community. You heard what Cole said. Find out what's important to you. Have a voice. He wants the place to be a better place, and I think we can all kind of align with what he says there, that we want things to be better. So that's good way to kind of share your vote. So really quick, what are your rights as a voter? We talked about this a little bit earlier, but you get to vote independently and privately. And we'll show a little bit of a video of what it looks like when you come to vote. But when you walk into that polling place, you walk up with your driver's license and you set it down with the person who's at the table, and they check your name and they'll give you a ballot, and you can walk into a private booth. It's kind of like it's got a little bit of a border there, and you can cast your ballot by yourself. You also have a right to send it in by absentee voting by requesting a form. If you would like and you want assistance, whether you do it the absentee voting way or if you do it in person, you can ask for help. A person who's an poll worker there, who's an elected, they are part of a, they're a trained group of people. They can help you fill out that ballot if you need assistance. You also have a right for an accessible polling location. If you went there and you didn't feel comfortable, you didn't feel like it was accessible, you didn't feel like you were able to kind of share your vote in a private way, you can talk to one of the officials there. You can vote from your car. I think Dean asked that earlier, but you could call there, and I'll go through those numbers here in a little bit, but you can pull up to your polling location, make that phone call, and they'll come out and get your vote. And then you also have the right to accessible voting equipment to find out which machines, and so that says, here's a link here, to find out which machine your county uses. You can click there and kind of look into what tools are available to you at your local location. So, but just to hit on a few of those, again, you can do that independently, you can do that on your own, but you also, if you need help, the people that are working there have went through a training. They're there to help you, to make it easy, to make it accessible, to make it available to you. And even if it was something that maybe you needed larger print, they would have to provide that for you. You might have to make arrangements and ask questions, but it's certainly available to you. I'm going to show a video, and then I'm going to see if there's any questions here maybe that people have had about having an accessible location. So So our gentleman from the county auditor's office again. Let's see.
We say that America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. We prize our democratic form of government so highly that we're willing to fight to preserve it. But it takes more than the sacrifice of our brave soldiers to protect freedom. Democracy fails if we don't vote. County auditors want to make it as simple as possible for you to vote. Hey, Tim here, your county auditor. Some people are intimidated by voting or unsure of the process. Voting can be fun, or at least painless. A great way to start is to find out what's on the ballot before you go. It will be published in the newspaper before the election. Many county auditors have sample ballots online. Most candidates will have websites explaining their views. Also, think about when you should go to the polls. Maybe you're limited by your job or other responsibilities, but if you want to avoid long lines, try going mid-morning or mid-afternoon. If you aren't sure where your polling place is, contact me, your county auditor, or go to iowaauditors.org and click on the county you live in. When you get to the polls, you'll be greeted by precinct election officials who will take you through the process step by step. In Iowa, you don't need any identification at the polls if you are already registered to vote at your home address. If you aren't sure if you're registered, check with me, your county auditor. Also, check out our video on registering to vote. Thank you. In Iowa, you can even register to vote at the polls with the proper identification, but you'll save everyone time by doing it ahead of time. Once you're properly identified, you'll be given a ballot and sent to a booth. If you get confused, don't worry. The instructions are posted in each booth. If you make a mistake, don't worry. You can turn in your ballot and get another one. If you make another mistake, you can get a third ballot. Try not to make any more mistakes because 3 is the limit. Different counties in Iowa have different voting machines, but don't worry, they all work the same for the voter. Each polling place will have a voting machine that allows voters with disabilities to vote unassisted. If you would like assistance, talk to your precinct election officials. If you can't go into the polling place, a ballot may be brought to your vehicle by 2 officials. But if you still think that voting at the polls will be difficult for you, you may always vote absentee. For more information about that, see our voting absentee video. When you're done marking your ballot, you put it in the slot on the top of the machine, and the voting tabulator counts your votes.
Hi, I'm Bill Peterson, Executive Director of the Iowa State Association of Counties. If you have any questions at all about voting, please contact your county auditor. County auditors in Iowa want to make sure that you vote. Be sure to watch all 3 of our election videos to learn how county auditors bring you free, fair, and honest elections in the state of Iowa.
This has been a production of the Iowa State Association of Counties about voting in the state of Iowa. This is part.
All right. I'm going to share maybe. So here's a sample of the ballot. It's the beginning part. This is what it kind of looks like. There's a general election. This is for Scott County in Iowa. There are examples out on the Secretary of State's website where you can actually get a ballot, and I have one pulled up. But when my internet went down, I think I lost my ballot that was pulled up. So, all right, so that's an example of one. I'll find one here when we get into kind of going through some of the websites here at the end, but that's an example of one in an official ballot. Some of the things that I want to kind of just go over really quick, and then we're going to get to dive into some websites for a few minutes, but you could start absentee voting Monday, October 5th. So that day has passed by a few days, and you could certainly do that now. It has to be postmarked by October 24th, and the election day is November 3rd. These are the ways that I would encourage you to consider voting. You can certainly do it by absentee ballot and request it. And the safest way, if you wanted to stay safe in the pandemic and keep social distancing, you could mail that in. I think that's an individual choice, how concerned you are about the mail system. So if you would like to do that, as Mr. Flair had mentioned, you can take that absentee ballot and go down to your county auditor's office, and I'll show you how to find that in a second, but you can go down to your county auditor's office and you can have them come out to your car and pick it up. They have curbside voting. That's the second safest. The third maybe is to go down to your county auditors, go into their office at a time where there's less traffic, wear PPE if you would like to, and then place your vote there. The other way is you could actually go down to your polling place on November 3rd and do curbside voting there. And then the last is to actually go into your polling place and place your vote. So you can vote a lot of different ways. You can do it in person, or you can do it by mail, or you can do it by absentee ballot, but do it by curbside. You can pull up with your car, have your parents' card, and they'll come out and they'll verify that they have that.
Bill,
but those are ways that you can vote. Yep, go ahead.
I just have to interrupt you. I just want clarification if you could go back to that one slide. Do you have to, do you have to request the absentee ballot before October 24th? Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
And then you can turn it in. Does it have to be postmarked by a certain date?
It has to be postmarked on November 2nd.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
No, I appreciate that. Yep, because I think that is a little bit misleading there. That's absentee ballot. That has to be, you have to request that before the 24th. They'll mail it out. You're not giving yourself a lot of time there, so that's why we try to do all the pre-training with the 24th. And then once you get that ballot, turn it in right away, but it has to be mailed by November 2nd. So, finally, I'm going to do a kind of a check to see where you're at. But before we do that, I want you guys each to have an action plan before we leave today, and then I'm going to share some resources with you. I know we're getting really close to the hour, but there are 5 steps. First, you have to register. Second, I would encourage you to be informed when you place your vote. Third is you have to have proper identification. So you could say number 3 is number 1, but you may need to get an ID or you may need to get your voter registration card. Then you have to find your polling place and then you have to vote. So register, get informed, have ID, and vote. So we're going to put a poll out there and see where everybody's at here. Give you a little more time to fill this one out because you have a few choices there. So
we're not seeing the poll, Bill, right now.
Oh, Alicia?
I saw it.
I saw it.
I saw it.
It's up there. It might be on a different screen.
I saw it too.
Oh, great. Thank you.
How are we doing, Alicia? Do we have a number of people entered in?
Yeah, it looks like we have about 15 people who voted, 16.
We'll give it another maybe 20 seconds there and then. Okay, go ahead. Let's see the results. Where were we at? All right, so we have about 40% that still need to register, 12% that need to get informed, 6% who need to kind of get proper identification. It sounds like everybody knows their polling site, but we'll double check that. I have to check mine every time, even though it's been the same place. I just always double check because it has changed. Before it used to be right across the street from my house, and then they moved it. Made it very inconvenient, about 2 blocks away from there. So, and then the last part, we have 41% of people who have voted. Then we did have somebody who said before we got started that they had voted. So I really want to encourage, I love all the engagement and really look like people are really they've got a plan. And so I'd really encourage you to identify your next step and make sure you follow through and make sure your voice is heard. Amy, before we go to the website, I just wanted to pause and see if you guys had some questions in the chat for me.
I don't think there are. Yeah.
No, not at this point.
Okay.
I have a question. What if I'm not sure whether or not I'm registered to vote? Maybe I am, but I can't remember. I've moved a lot. Is there any, I mean, is there any reason why I can't, like, will it be bad if I double my registration to vote or duplicate?
So, Kelsey, there was a slide back in the beginning, and I'll kind of show people on the website, but there was a slide back in the beginning where we, I'll kind of go back there. I think this is a big thing because I think that, there's a lot of news out there. There is, at the Secretary of State website, you can verify if you're registered, and it's that simple. You put your first name in, your last name, and your zip code, and you can find out if you're registered. And so I'm going to show people how to do that. And so you can't, you might ask yourself, can everybody see the Secretary of State website? You might ask yourself, I think it's a great question, is what if I register twice or 3 times? The role of the Secretary of State and the role of the county auditors is to make sure that elections are followed by the rules. So they track this stuff really carefully. So if you had tried to register twice, they would catch that. They would catch that information. They've got an interactive tool piece there, but you are able to check on this site if you're registered, and that's a great way to do it. Another way to do it is through your county auditor, and I'll kind of show that as well. But the first thing we have here is, I'm going to go back out to the home site. This is your Secretary of State's website, and it has all the information that you'd want in regards to voting. It has a general list of your candidates. It has a judge retention list. And then you can find things, vulnerability, disclosure, voter ID, straw polls, but there's even a section here on voting with disabilities. And there's a whole, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but there's what do you need to do to register, how to be an absentee voter if you've forgotten what I said today, and I can't leave my home, can I still vote? How do you go about doing that? So that's a pretty good set of tools there, voting with a disability. Another one that I'd really point out is this, under his top tab, he's got this election site, and it really has everything. You can start right at the top, just like we did. I feel like we're all kind of glitching. Are we okay? Okay, so you can start right at the top. Am I registered to vote? And I could do this pretty quickly here. Hopefully this won't disclose any information here. Oh, I'm not a robot. Oh no. Tractors. I should know what tractors are. I'm from Iowa. And it says, oh, it says, I'm not registered. I am registered. I just did this yesterday, so I'm not sure why it's not.
Sure.
So then you can get in from here. You can go into candidates as well. Who's in the primary election, the general election, frequently asked questions. That's one of the ones I like to go to most because it kind of walks you through that piece. The other thing under voters is, again, that voting with disabilities, a voter ready toolkit, and then find your precinct and poll. So I'm going to show that one as well. I'll try that and see if I can find that one. I am not a robot. So I would go to Callanan Middle School, and it's got a Google map there. And it says both for primary and then also for city schools. Those are the same ones. So here's, I'll just go to one more link, is the general. This is the, this is everybody who's running for the different offices. It's pretty lengthy. It's not an interactive Google map, but it's one that you can show. So the other website that I want to take a second to look at is, this is the auditors page. And so I use that term a lot, county auditors, and Amy pointed out to me that I use it so much because I'm kind of familiar with it, maybe not everybody is. The county auditor, they serve, this is their role. Their election responsibilities include registering voters, supervising the precinct, and then publishing election notices, and then being the custodian of the poll book. So they're the ones who make sure that everybody's voted correctly. And I'll go to my hometown county, but if I want to find out who the auditor is, I can click right there. It tells me how to call them, what their email address is, and what their hours are. It also tells me maybe who their office people are as well. It talks about elections. I can find out from the county auditors what key positions are open and what people are running, who's running during that time. But if we're all from Polk County, let's see if I can go back to the main page, and we wanted to find out who our auditor is and where we want, let's say we all wanted to go today over our lunch hour and place our vote at the county auditors here in Polk County, if that's where most people are from. I guess that's true, but that would be Court Avenue. And then again, it would tell you how to find that by location and then when they're open. They are open the 2 Saturdays before the election as well. So, all right, though that is a lot of the information that I was going to share. I would just encourage you guys again, as much as you can, you know, to get informed and to think about who it is that you think can best represent your voice, and then find your polling place and cast your vote. So hopefully you guys will all register, and we'll go from 41% people registered to 100%. It looked like we might have 18 or 19 people that could vote, and that makes a difference. That gets us 22 million minus 14, Kristen, is, well, anyways, that's not.
Awesome.
Any questions in the chat box?
The key thing right there, Bill, is every single vote counts. So
Yep.
Absolutely, that's so important. So I can't thank you all enough for being a part of this, because it really does matter. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it. It's like, I'm just that one vote. But you know what? Every one of us is that one vote, and it all comes together to really make a difference. So hats off to all of you for being here. And to Bill, thank you so much for sharing all of this information, and Amy and Jess for helping to moderate and coordinate this. So go ahead and finish, Bill. I'm sorry, but I kind of jumped in when you...
No, that was good. I don't have a lot more to add. Just encourage people to get engaged. And, you know, one of the things that we talked about yesterday, Amy and I and Kirsten talked about, is that because the big election's coming up, that's top of mind, voting for the president. But there's so many other ways to be involved, whether it's with your city, whether it's with your school. And if you don't, if you don't like the way things are going, it's a great opportunity to share your voice and say, I want to be involved in the decisions that are made at school, or I want to be involved in the decisions that are made in my city and what they're doing with the park, or I want to be involved with what's going on with construction or whatever that is. But you start to share your voice there, and you get engaged and you get connected. We had a presentation last week. We talked about our conference, and it was a dad and son, and somebody asked them how they got involved. And they said that, well, they had a party that they were affiliated with. It was either the Democratic or Republican Party, and they just started going to every event. And then they go, you go there, and then people start asking you to do stuff, and you start to get more involved, and you start to find out what matters. And so I think it's a great way to share your voice, and our voices are important. Voting's a great equalizer, whether we're voting at home so that we get pizza or cheeseburgers, or if we're voting for president, up from any of those scales. So I appreciate all of your time and your enthusiasm today. Get out and vote.
Hey everybody, I put Bill's contact information in the chat box in case you want to reach out. The DD Council is a wonderful resource on a number of different things and will provide a lot of support wherever you need it. And so please feel free to reach out to the council. I'm also going to put my email in the chat box. You're also welcome to reach out to me if you have any questions, and we'll try to get answers for you or get some information back to you. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bill. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. So
Thank
fun.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Take
you, everybody.
It was fun
Have
to
a
be
great
on
day.
with you. Thank you.